Alright, we got another video. This one is called The Bizarre Case of Casey Anthony.
Meet Casey Anthony, a woman who hopped online and made this TikTok about how she's becoming a legal advocate for those who need it most, especially her daughter who was tragically... I know what you're thinking. So, well, there's something I forgot to tell you. She is the one who, her daughter, allegedly, and that's a big allegedly, because she was found not guilty on the charges. Now, this is regarded as one of the most controversial cases in American history, and you'll see why in a moment. See, Casey Anthony had a problem. One day, her daughter, Kaylee Anthony, went missing. Casey's mom, Cindy, remember those names, asked her, hey, where's your daughter? Now, Casey's mom, Cindy, asked this because they all live in the same house. So Cindy's like, yo, I have not seen my granddaughter, Kaylee, around. Casey said, no big deal, mom. Kaylee's just with the babysitter. The mom says, okay, fine. Well, then a month passes. The mom says, excuse me, Casey. Now, this whole time, Casey been going to parties, going out, having a good time. Casey says, what, mom? The mom says, oh, no. The mom immediately calls the police. The police come over, ask the same thing. They said, Casey, where's your daughter? Casey says, oh, no, she with the babysitter. She tells the police that the babysitter must have taken her daughter. Police say, okay, where's the babysitter? Now, here's what you got to understand. Casey, in her own words, is a liar, but not your ordinary type of liar, a pathological liar. And you'll see the difference in a moment. She tells the police, fine, let's go to the babysitter's house. They go over to the address that Casey gives them. Nobody was living at that house. They said, Casey, nobody's living in this house. Casey says, what? Are you for real? Just straight lying. The police at this point, obviously suspicious. They tell her, have you told anyone that your daughter's missing? She says, yeah. I told my coworkers. They tell her, okay, where are your coworkers? She said, oh, my coworkers are at Universal Studios where I work. They say, okay, let's go. She says, go where? They say, girl, what do you think this is? We're talking about a missing girl. Take us to where you work, Universal Studios. She says, okay, let's go. So the police and Casey Anthony go to Universal Studios. She walk in, start waving at people. She's actually doing this. She's actually waving at people. The police look at who she's waving at. Everyone's like kind of waving back a little bit. They're like, Casey, do you work here or not? Casey says, I used to like 3 years ago. And well, that poses a problem, right? Because Casey's daughter was missing 30 days ago. So she didn't tell no coworkers at Universal Studio. The police say, come on. They lock Casey up. But at this point, nobody knows where her daughter, Kaylee, is. Now, I know what you're thinking. How could Casey possibly get away with this? Well, hold on. We finna get to that. See, to understand how Casey got away with it, allegedly, we have to look at her family. They hop on television as soon as Casey gets arrested. They're saying they still believe their daughter, Kaylee, is out there somewhere. Now, they have a family spokesperson with them, a person that makes them look good in the media and all that. He quits. He says, something ain't right with not just Casey, with a whole family. Let's get into it. As we start diving deeper into the story, I want you to remember two things. One, the Anthony family, like I said, is erratic. And two, this next part, the police in this case were incompetent. So the police get a call, right? Casey is arrested at this point. The Anthony family is saying, oh, we don't know what's going on, right? So the police get a call. This person is a meter reader. He says, hey, I think I saw a strange object in the forest area around the Anthony house. The police say, let me stop you right there. Don't talk to us about that. Call the tip line if you have a tip. He says, okay. He calls the tip line. Tip line don't pick up. So he tries again later. The police go over. They say, what? He said, bro, in the forest over there, I swear I saw a skull. The police look around a little bit. They're like, we ain't seen nothing. They leave. 2 months later, and this is important. Time is of the essence when trying to determine what happened to somebody who has been, if you haven't guessed by now, what he saw in the forest was Kaylee, Casey Anthony's daughter. But day by day, more forensic evidence is being lost. So he tries again a few months later. The police go over, they see Kaylee Anthony. They charge Casey Anthony with her daughter. Boom, let's jump straight to the trial.
Let me guess, it's too late to use the evidence?
But here's where things start to get wicked. Casey Anthony had one hell of a lawyer. See, her lawyer's plan was to cause doubt as to if Casey did it or not. He does not have to prove that Casey is innocent. He just has to make you doubt that she did it. So the lawyer says, look, I already know who did it. It was Casey's dad, George. The story that Casey's lawyer brings up is that Casey's dad found Kaylee in the pool. Sadly, she was already gone. The dad says, oh my gosh, I don't want my daughter, Casey, to get in trouble for this because Casey wasn't watching Kaylee. Kaylee went into the pool. So the dad, George, went to Casey, told her what happened, and told her, I'll take care of it. Casey starts crying. The dad says, don't cry, don't cry. Your daughter's actually okay. So Casey believed her daughter was okay. That's why she was perfectly fine and going to parties and all that. Now that sounds insane, right? Well, of course it does. So Casey's lawyer has to get a little bit deeper. He says, oh, by the way, there's something I forgot to tell y'all. Casey's dad, George, did terrible things to Casey when she was young. That's why Casey's able to lie so easily, go to parties, cover her feelings. The prosecutor said, boy, y'all sound stupid. Ain't nobody gonna believe that story. They bring up George, Casey's dad. They said, is Casey's story true? Are you the one who found Kaylee? The dad looks genuinely shocked. He says, no. And here's the most important part of the story. As a jury member, all you hear is facts. Kind of like this video. All you're hearing is facts. But seeing people's actual emotions makes things very different. Listen closely. Y'all remember when I told you Casey was out there partying? Meanwhile, the whole time they couldn't find her daughter? I can't tell you how Casey is feeling in this picture. But she looked like she's having a good time. In all the pictures she's partying in. They record a conversation that Casey's parents are having with Casey. They seem heartbroken, saying, where is Kaylee? We need to find her. Casey chilling on the phone. She's like, huh? Oh yeah, hopefully they find her. But maybe that's how Casey processes things. Before this trial, there's something I didn't tell you. George, the dad, tried it himself. On a note, it said, basically, I can't take the loss of losing both my granddaughter and my daughter. The police caught him just in time and they saved his life. But I can't tell you if he tried it himself because he was sad or if he tried it himself because he was feeling guilty about the situation. So all a jury is allowed to hear is straight facts. Casey's daughter was missing. Casey lied about it. Defendants say, oh, her dad made her lie. Okay, Casey went partying while her daughter was missing. Defense, hey, that's how she processed emotions because her dad did terrible things to her. Okay, but the prosecutors had another ace up their sleeve. Well, it turns out they found traces of chloroform, something that can be used to people, and evidence that someone was in Casey's car. They said, okay, explain that. Casey's lawyer says gladly. Because remember what we talked about earlier in this video, how long it took police to find Kaylee because they screwed up. So Casey's lawyer says, well, y'all found chloroform in Casey's car, but did you find chloroform on Kaylee? Can you guys prove that that's how she was sadly? No, they couldn't because it took them so long to find her. The prosecution says, hold on, we're not done. We found a Google search that said chloroform on Casey's laptop. And in a bizarre twist, Casey's mom, Cindy, goes up and says, oh, I'm the one who searched up chloroform. I was trying to search up chlorophyll, it's plant stuff, and I searched up chloroform. They said, Mama, somebody typed in chloroform, clicked enter. She said, oh yeah, at that point I was just curious, so I just searched it up. They said, Mama, you was at work. You clocked in at work when that search was searched up. And her answer to that was, well, sometimes she'd be working at home, so they'd be messing up the time cards. Casey's lawyer said, there you have it. The whole time, Casey's lawyer is actually terrified because there was another Google search that he knew about. A Google search that said foolproof ways to... The prosecution never brings it up. Why didn't they bring it up? Well, it's quite simple, actually, because they didn't know about it. They searched Casey's laptop, but they only searched Internet Explorer history. Casey used Firefox, and this one mistake had the potential to turn this entire case around. How do I know this? Because they asked Casey's lawyer afterwards. They said, "What do you think about the evidence?" He said, "Boy, I think Casey's innocent. I really do. I believe her dad may have searched that up because remember her dad tried it himself. But boy, the next tab after foolproof ways to was MySpace. Casey uses MySpace. Casey's dad don't have a MySpace." He said that would have been tough. They asked the prosecutors, "What do you think about that?" The prosecutor said, "Dang, that's an oversight. I wish we would have had that." Now, with all of this evidence or lack thereof, the jury still thought she did it. But her lawyer reminded them in his ending statement, if there is a doubt, then y'all better say no. They're like, okay, there are reasonably some doubts. So they said, not guilty. They didn't say innocent. They said, not guilty. Now, this isn't the jury's fault. They can only work with what they have. In fact, they said, but she is guilty for lying to the police. 4 counts. They were trying to give her some time. But the prosecutor sucked so bad and her lawyer was so good that her lawyer said, you know what? Let's make it 2 counts instead of 4. The judge said, boy, you better stop. He then convinces the courts that the 4 counts, actually, it's kind of 2 counts if you think about it. On top of that, she already had some time served because she was locked up before. So it amounts to about 10 days. They said, we can't argue with that. She got 10 days in prison and walked out. Now, as you could probably imagine, the verdict was met with extreme outrage. As for where Casey went after the trial, she started living with one of her defense attorneys. Her parents said, nah, you can't come back to the crib, obviously. She made a few documentaries about the case, and some of the juries watched them, and in their words, boy, I wish we can go back and I could just say she was guilty. I don't know what I was thinking. And then many years later, she pops up on TikTok saying that she's a legal advocate. So you can imagine why people are a little confused that Casey Anthony is just popping up on their feed. At the end of the day, R.I.P. to the little one, R.I.P. to the little one, Kaylee. Now, I know this story is a lot longer than what people are used to, so if you made it this far, congratulations.
So basically, her lawyer did her a solid one by being so good. How was she able to afford the lawyer? She didn't have a job for what, a month? How was she able to afford a lawyer that good? W video. But how is she able to afford a lawyer? That's my question. How is she able to afford such a good lawyer? Casey Anthony being a legal advocate is like a mass life ender becoming a world peace advocate. I'm saying. She shouldn't even be free in the first place. That's what I'm saying. I watched the entire trial when it was happening. There was no doubt in my mind she was guilty and would be found guilty. The fact that this lady killed her child, partied, turned her family life upside down, ruined so many lives, and still get to walk the earth is absolutely wild. The fact that they tried to play it off as if she's an individual who suffers from pathological lying, and they tried to rule her death as accidental too. You don't accidentally wrap your child's face with duct tape. One very special piece of information is missing. Her mother called the cops because she stated that Casey's car smelled like a corpse. There was also hair found in her trunk. But how you wait a month to report your grandchild missing? The entire family need to be locked up. True, I left that part out though because it gets a little confusing. In the court, the mom took the statement back, kind of. The mom said she meant that as a figure of speech, and they found a bag of trash in the back. That is the moment the mom called the police though. Something wrong with the parents at this point. Something wrong with the parents. Like, the parents just don't care for for their grandchild. They don't care for their grandchild. They only care about their child. They didn't want her to go to prison, so I guess that they was like retracting statements saying that this happened and that this didn't happen just so that their daughter wouldn't go to prison. That's what I think was happening here. They didn't care about that little girl. They just didn't want their daughter to go to prison. That's what it was. That's what it is. That's what I think happened. That's what I think happened.
bitch. Yeah, I'm in the side. I got a Glock 9. You can get hit with that light. I just went anti. I'm on my slime, she bite. Yeah, you fucking with pipeline. They in the crib, they tight. Hit it no block, she been mine. All of that money ain't been mine. I spend that money and rewind. I get that guap and I rewind. Fucking your bitch and I rewind. Fucking your daughter and I rewind. Fucking your bitch like 3 times.